Greetings everyone and welcome to episode 48 of Off the Sprue. In this one we'll be detailing the hull of Ryefield Model's M1A1 Abrams main battle tank. You'll recall in the previous video we did a lot of work on the turret. I did those cutouts, we completed the interior. We also put a NATO green base coat on the turret itself. It's time to move on to the hull. In this video there's quite a lot to cover. I'll be doing the basic hull assembly, the lower hull. I'll be adding road wheels, drive sprockets, etc., as well as the suspension. And I'll also be doing some detailing. I'll be detailing the driver's compartment, assembling that, painting it, adding some fine detail, and also the same goes for the engine bay. So let's get started. The instructions to assemble the suspension is very straightforward. The whole piece is a single piece, very nicely molded, very nicely detailed. And as with most tank kits, these torsion bars form the suspension. They are tabbed, so there's no real way of screwing this up if you follow the instructions properly. Some very nice detail there visible. This is the completed lower hull with the various suspension arms in there, torsion bars fitted. And we can move on to the interior. These are the components for the engine bay. You'll see the fuel tanks are there. Some of the other components, as well as the interior of the driver's compartment. The bare bones pieces are there. The kit comes with a nice set of components for the driver's compartment, the seat being one of them. Very nice detail on that. Carefully cut this from the sprue, and then start applying primer and paint. That's the seat drive fitted. Very peculiar driving position in the M1. I'll be using Mr. Hobby's surfacer. For primer. I really love this primer. Look at the result I've been getting there. That is smooth as possible, and this is a great starting point to put a paint job on this hull. After applying primer, I do a light sanding just to get rid of some of that dusty residue that one sometimes find on primer coats. I can also start priming some of the other components. In this case, I'm using red for this little fire extinguisher. It's just easier to apply primer than to go through all the drama of having to apply a red paint for the extinguisher. This is some detailing I've done on the driver's seat itself. Of course, the white similar to the interior, and the black being the vinyl that one sees in reference pictures of that same seat. Just to bring out the detail, I use some neutral gray, and I then use the dry brushing technique just to bring out that raised detail on that seat. A very nicely detailed little piece to be fitted to the driver's compartment. So having laid down our primer coat, this is now ready for pre-shading, and I'll be following the same procedure you've seen me use countless times on other builds. I first start with pure white, and using my Iwata Eclipse airbrush, I now start laying down these sections of pure white on the hull section itself. This is of course a technique well known to aircraft modelers, and I've been using it with good results on armor projects such as this myself. So once the pre-shading is done, and in this I used pure white and pure black, this is the final result. Everything is nicely pre-shaded, and this is now ready for the various base coats that we'll be using on this hull. The interior color, similar as with the turret, is insignia white, and this is now applied very lightly to the interior, taking care not to kill that pre-shading that we've put so much work into. This is applied to both the driver's compartment as well as the engine bay. Having now applied the base coat, we can move on to detailing. Now, if you look at reference pictures of the actual M1A1 Abrams, you can see that the fuel tanks are black and they are covered with a metallic heat shield. And in order to do this, I will need to mask out the fuel tank sections in that engine bay with masking tape. Quite a lot of masking to be done, but as always, if you take the trouble to do this properly, the results certainly will be very good. There we go, that's properly masked out. And I now use dark aluminium from Alclad as the color of choice to paint the heat shield sections of that fuel tank. Basically what I did is I laid down the dark aluminium across the entire fuel tank, and then later on masked just the top sections to do the exposed black, I would assume plastic sections of the fuel tank itself. Having now done this and leaving it to dry, we can move on to the road wheels. There are a lot of wheels on this tank. There we go. And the basic step to start with, as always, is just to cut these from the sprue and to start cutting away little tabs. As always, I prefer to leave a little bit of the connecting pins from the sprue on the part after I've cut it, and then just properly clean this up once I have the part in my hand. There you go, those are the two wheels. They've tabbed it, so you can't screw this up. They can only fit together in one position. The same goes for the drive sprockets at the back. Very easy to assemble, really no way to screw this up. And we've got two of those. The fit is absolutely perfect. There we go. And yeah, just the next step is to assemble all those road wheels. And once they are done, they are of course ready for primer and for paint. And that is the next step. Now in reference pictures, you will notice that the rubber on these road wheels are damaged. They are chipped and cracked, and that is something we'll have to simulate. And for this I used my Dremel tool and a fine cutting bit, and just added the damage that I see in the reference pictures to the edges of that wheel, or the rubber road surface. Very easy to do with a sharp tool. That's the result. The rubber sections have the necessary chipping, and we can now move on to paint. I'm using Mr. Hobby again, the surfacer. This will do a very nice job of settling into all that recessed detail that we just added to the road wheel. Super smooth, loving this primer. Next up, some pre-shading as well. I'm using pure white. And just applying a little bit of white to the center section of that wheel. This will aid us later on when I start applying the NATO green base color. I'm going to use tire black for the rubber sections of this road wheel. That is the next color that I'll be adding with the airbrush. Just spraying this in an even coat. There you can see the result. Now, there was a lot of questions about masking this on Instagram. Guys, there's a very easy way of doing this. No need to cut a circular mask or use stencils. Just use a little bit of masking tape, similar to what I'm doing on screen. Apply that to the rubber section of the wheel. And if you do this properly, the sides are now open and ready to take the NATO base color. So there's no need to cut circular masks. Using NATO green as well as NATO light in order to mix up a lighter version for the highlights. This is now very easy just to spray into that center section of that wheel. On screen I'm applying the highlight color, and then once we peel the masking tape, ta-da! There we go, fully painted wheel. No need for a circular wheel mask. Only thing I need to do still is to use a fine brush and just touch up the rubber section of that road wheel. Very easy to do. Just to enhance the cracked rubber on that road wheel surface, I'm using some deck tan and just very lightly applying some dry brushing to those cracked sections. You're just looking to do a very subtle highlight effect on that cracked rubber. There we go, that's the result. The wheels have been painted NATO green overall, and then also those rubber road wheel sections. Next up is a wash. I'm using dark wash from M1A1, and this being an enamel product, I use some odorless thinner just to dilute it, and this is now applied to all those nuts that is visible inside the wheel. Cleanup is very easy, just a little bit of odorless thinner and a cotton bud, and the wheel is properly cleaned up, and those nuts are nicely visible. To add some metal to the drive sprockets, I'm using these two pigments from M1A1, as well as this graphite detailing pencil. This is something you've seen me use before. This is a very useful tool. Basically just a stick of graphite. You can also use a ordinary pencil for this. And I first started off by just polishing some of that metal pigment onto the edges of the drive sprocket where the paint would be worn off, as well as those center sections there. It's a very subtle effect, and of course it only works if you polish that pigment into the part itself. I follow this up with the stick of graphite. Again, just working that graphite into all that recessed detail. And polishing it up to get that nice metallic shine that we're looking for on these wheels. Now, something very interesting about the Abrams that I didn't know was that the hubs are actually clear. They're made from a clear material in order to allow crews to see the oil level inside that wheel, and you can clearly see it there in that reference picture. Ryefield model was very clever in molding these as clear parts. Really one of the few Abrams kits that has this feature. These are glued to the center section of each wheel, and honestly, in that form, they look a little bit like diamonds. So there's some more work to be done. I'm going to use fresh engine oil from M1A1. And just to simulate the oil visible through that clear part, I'm going to use a brush and apply some of that oil to the clear hub section. There is the result. Quite a cool little detail that we've just added. And this then completes the wheels. They are ready to go onto the hull, having been painted and detailed fully. Now, back to the driver's compartment. In reference pictures, you'll see that the footpegs have this non-skid metal plate on them, steel plate. And this is something that's lacking from the kit. And this is a detail that I wanted to add. So the product that I use for this is this anti-skid plate from Voyager model. Once I cut the appropriate little squares from that sheet, it's very easy just to bend them to shape, similar to what you're seeing on your screen. And then I used L-clad steel just to apply the correct steel color to those two footpegs. They're easily glued in place with a little bit of super glue. Just make sure it's in the correct position. There we go. And there we go. Very realistic, upgraded footpegs in the driver's compartment. These gauges need a little bit of glass on the front of them, and for that I used UV resin. Now, if you've been following my videos, you know I love this product for things like instrumentation for lenses and clear parts. A little bit is applied to the part itself, and then it's cured with a UV light. This is actually a cell phone sanitizer. It's one of those weird pandemic era purchases that I think most of us made. And it works very well to cure the resin. There you can see a nice little lens on each one of those gauges. I can also start fitting the other small parts. This is the fire extinguisher. And the seat can go in as well, making sure that it's in the correct position. Glued in place. At this point, it's also necessary to start adding some wiring. There are these these wires and radio components running throughout the driver's compartment. I use a 0.25 millimeter wire from AK to make this little component that you see with a coiled wire. This is ready to go into the driver's compartment, and using a good reference picture, I then add the rest of the wiring. There you can see the result. Very tight space to do that in, but the results speak for themselves. I'm certainly loving the look of this. This then completes the driver's compartment. Wiring continues into the engine bay itself. Of course, there are these hydraulic hoses. They were actually very easy to scratch pull. I used some vinyl tubing, similar to what you're seeing on screen, as well as some metal components. This is a little piece of wire, a millimeter piece of wire that I bent, as well as little brass tubes that I have in the scratch pull box. First, the hose is painted in the same rust color as we see in the reference picture, and then once these components are assembled, there's our hydraulic hoses. They are ready to go into the engine bay. The same goes for all the other wiring, also using reference pictures to properly place these. This is the battery bank. The Abrams is a big beast that requires a lot of power, and it was easy just to paint this up and then add the correct wiring to that battery bank. I will of course be cutting away sections of the engine bay itself just to make this visible. That's a very nice detail piece as well for the engine bay. Also added this wiring loom. You can see that running throughout the engine bay. Very easy, just a bunch of wires glued together with masking tape. Guys, and that is the result. The interior of the hull is 99% complete. I'm going to hang on at this point until the engine is finished. In the past, I've done all this detailing, got carried away with adding wiring, and then I found out later the engine doesn't fit. So I'm going to put this aside for now, finish the engine later, and then I'll revisit the hull. This is it for episode 48. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll be doing a lot more on this project. It's not done yet. Do follow me on Instagram. You'll get frequent updates on this project there. And I'll be seeing everyone in the next video. Thank you for joining me.